Captain Taman stared at the glowing crystal in front of him. The archive room on Nexus Prime was quiet except for the soft hum of the storage units. He had been searching through old records for 3 days now, looking for any information about humans before their first contact with the galaxy. What he found made no sense at all. The crystal held records that were 50,000 years old. 50,000 years. That was long before humans even knew how to make fire according to their own history. Yet there it was, carved deep into the quantum crystal by some ancient civilization that no longer existed. The message was simple but scary. Should you encounter the bipedal mammals from the third planet of Sol system, do not engage in hostilities. They are deceptively dangerous. Taman read it again. Then he read it a third time. His hands were shaking slightly as he put the crystal back in its holder. He moved to the next storage unit. Inside was another crystal, this one from a different civilization entirely. The Vorthon Empire had ruled half the galaxy 30,000 years ago. Their record said almost the same thing. Warning to all future species. The mammals of Sol 3 must never be attacked. Total extinction follows provocation. A third crystal, a fourth, a fifth. Every single ancient civilization had left the same warning about humans. The crystal hegemony, the plague swarms of Kepler 442, the silicon mines of Andromeda. All of them had written warnings about humans. All of them were now extinct. Taman sat back in his chair. This made no sense. Humans had only learned to travel faster than light 300 years ago. They were babies compared to most galactic civilizations. The Corvin Republic had spaceflight for 10,000 years. The Mantis Collective had been exploring the galaxy for 20,000 years. Yet these warnings about humans were older than any known civilization. He pulled up the human application to join the Galactic Council on his screen. The document was normal, boring even. It talked about human art, their science, their peaceful intentions. They wanted to trade with other species. They wanted to share knowledge. They seemed like nice people. So why did every ancient civilization in the galaxy warn against fighting them? Taman gathered all the crystals he had found. There were dozens of them. He loaded them into a transport case and headed for the council chambers. The council needed to know about this before they made any decisions about humanity. The main council chamber was huge. Representatives from 200 different species sat in curved rows that went up to the ceiling. At the center sat Elder Vrex of the Mantis Collective. He was old even by Mantis standards. His green shell had the deep color that came with age, and his large eyes had seen more history than most beings could imagine. Elder Vrex, Taman said as he approached the center platform. I need to show the council something important. Elder Vrex looked at him with those ancient eyes. Captain Taman, you have been researching in our archives. What have you found? Taman activated the holoprojector. The first crystal appeared in the air above them, its message glowing for all to see. A whisper went through the chamber as the representatives read the warning about humans. This crystal is 50,000 years old, Taman announced. It warns against fighting humans. He activated the second crystal, then the third, then the fourth. Each one carried the same warning from different civilizations across tens of thousands of years. The chamber grew very quiet. Every single ancient civilization left warnings about humans. Taman continued. But humans only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago. How is this possible? A representative from the Corvin Republic stood up. Supreme Admiral Kexvar was a proud being with silver skin and cold eyes. This is obviously fake, he said loudly. Humans are a young species. They are weak. These crystals must be human tricks designed to make us afraid. But Elder Vrex was staring at the crystals with an expression Taman had never seen before. Fear. Pure, ancient fear. Elder Vrex? Taman asked. Can you explain this? The old mantis was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I have seen these warnings before, Captain. My people have kept copies of them for 20,000 years. The chamber was completely silent now. We have always wondered, Elder Vrex continued, how these warnings could exist. They speak of events that had not yet happened when they were written. They warn of a species that did not yet exist. That's impossible, said Admiral Kexvar. Time doesn't work that way. Elder Vrex looked at him. Time works however it needs to work, Admiral. The universe has its own rules, and sometimes those rules are stranger than we can understand. Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying these warnings came from the future? I am saying, Elder Vrex replied slowly, that some truths transcend linear time, Captain. The warnings exist because they must exist. They were placed in the past to prevent something terrible in the future. Another representative spoke up. But what makes humans so dangerous? They look harmless. They're smaller than most of us. They don't have natural weapons or armor. Elder Vrex was quiet again. Then he said something that would haunt Taemin for years to come. Perhaps that is exactly why they are dangerous. Perhaps the universe's most terrible predator is the one that looks like prey. Admiral Kexvar laughed, but it sounded forced. You're all being foolish. These are just old stories. Superstitions. I refuse to be afraid of a species that probably can't even lift as much weight as a Corvan child. Elder Vrex looked at him with those ancient eyes. Admiral, I have lived for 800 years. In that time, I have learned that the oldest stories are usually the truest stories. The warnings exist for a reason. What reason? Admiral Kexvar demanded. Because, Elder Vrex said quietly. Every civilization that ignored them was destroyed. Taemin gathered his crystals and prepared to leave. As he walked toward the exit, he heard Elder Vrex speaking to the council in a voice that carried the weight of millennia. The humans will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. They will be treated with the respect due to any peaceful species. And we will all remember the oldest law of the galaxy. Never provoke humans. As Taemin left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed something important. Something that would change the galaxy forever. He just didn't know how right he was. Ambassador Sora stepped off the transport ship and onto Nexus Prime for the first time. The massive space station stretched out in all directions, bigger than any city on Earth. Millions of beings from hundreds of different species lived and worked here at the center of galactic civilization. She had prepared for this moment her entire life. First contact with alien civilizations was humanity's greatest achievement, and she was honored to represent her species before the Galactic Council. What she had not prepared for was the reaction she received. The moment Sora appeared in the main corridor, conversations stopped. Beings turned to stare at her, then quickly looked away. Some actually stepped back, giving her more space than normal diplomatic protocol required. Her escort, a tall blue-skinned Arcturian named Vel 9, noticed her confusion. Is something wrong, Ambassador? Everyone seemed... Sora paused, looking for the right word. Nervous. Vel 9's head tentacles twitched, and what she had learned was embarrassment. The Council has given very specific instructions about your visit. All beings are to maintain respectful distance and speak carefully in your presence. Why? Sora asked. I'm just a diplomat. I'm here to make friends, not enemies. Vel 9 was quiet for a moment. The Council has its reasons, Ambassador. Please do not take offense. As they walked through the station, Sora noticed more strange behavior. When they entered a restaurant, other diners became very quiet. When they rode the transport tubes, other passengers moved to different sections. When they passed a group of children from the Centauri colonies, the adults quickly pulled the children behind them. Do they think I'm dangerous? Sora asked. No, Ambassador. Vel 9 replied quickly. Not dangerous, just significant. The council chamber was even more impressive than the hollows had shown. 200 different species sat in curved rows that rose toward the ceiling like a great amphitheater. At the center sat Elder Vrex, his ancient green shell gleaming under the lights. Welcome, Ambassador Sora of Earth, Elder Vrex said in perfect English. We are honored by your presence. Sora bowed in the human fashion, then made the formal greeting gestures she had learned for each major species. The reaction was immediate and strange. Several representatives leaned back in their seats. Others whispered to each other in languages her translator couldn't pick up. Thank you, Elder Vrex, she replied. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community. She began her prepared presentation. She talked about human art, showing hollows of great paintings and sculptures. She discussed human science, explaining their discoveries and inventions. She shared human music, playing recordings that filled the chamber with Earth's greatest symphonies. But as she spoke, she noticed that the representatives weren't paying attention to the important things. When she showed images of the Louvre Museum, they ignored the priceless artworks and focused on the human security guards. When she played Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, They seemed more interested in the fact that the orchestra performed for 3 hours without stopping. The strangest reaction came when she showed a simple video of daily life on Earth. The camera followed a woman named Ji-Hai through her morning routine. Ji-Hai woke up early, went for a 10-kilometer run, lifted weights at the gym, then ate breakfast and went to work at a research laboratory. The council chamber became completely silent. "Is this normal for your species?" asked a representative from the Silicon Worlds. "What do you mean?" Sora asked. "The running, the lifting of heavy objects. Does your species do this for survival?" Sora smiled. "No, we do it for fun. Ji-Hai enjoys running and staying in shape. Many humans have similar hobbies." The silence in the chamber grew deeper. "For fun?" asked another representative. "Yes," Sora continued cheerfully. "Humans enjoy challenging themselves physically. We climb mountains, swim long distances, lift heavy weights, run marathons. Some people even jump out of perfectly good aircraft with parachutes for entertainment." She could hear what sounded like several representatives trying not to hyperventilate. "And this," she continued, showing another video, "is a typical human pet." The video showed a German shepherd dog playing with a human family. The large animal was gentle with the children, but its size and obvious strength were clear. "You keep predators in your homes?" asked a representative from the hive minds. "Dogs aren't predators," Sora laughed. "Well, they used to be wolves thousands of years ago, but now they're our best friends. Humans love animals. We keep cats, dogs, birds, fish, even reptiles as companions. But this creature could easily kill a human child," observed another representative. "I suppose it could," Sora admitted, "but it would never want to. We've bred loyalty and gentleness into them over thousands of generations. They would die to protect us." The presentation continued, but Sora could feel the mood in the chamber growing stranger. When she mentioned that humans often consumed ethyl alcohol for pleasure, several representatives actually gasped. "You voluntarily consume poison?" asked Elder Vrex. "It's not poison in small amounts," Sora explained. "We metabolize alcohol quite well. A glass of wine with dinner is considered normal and healthy." The breaking point came near the end of her presentation. A representative from the Crystalline Collective, a being named Zathari made of living crystal, was taking notes on a device that generated significant heat. As Sora walked past his section, Zathari's device malfunctioned and sprayed hot liquid across her hand and arm. The entire chamber fell completely silent. Sora looked down at her hand, which was clearly burned and already turning red. She could feel the pain, sharp and immediate. But instead of crying out or demanding medical attention, she simply pulled out a small cloth from her pocket. "Oh, that's quite hot," she said calmly, wiping the liquid from her hand. "No worries, Zathari. Accidents happen." She continued her presentation as if nothing had occurred, even though everyone in the chamber could see the obvious burn on her skin. The collective intake of breath from 200 different species was audible. Zathari was trembling so badly his crystal body was making ringing sounds. "Ambassador, you are injured. Should I call medical assistance?" "It's just a minor burn," Sora replied with a genuine smile. "I've had much worse from cooking accidents. It will heal in a few days." After the presentation ended and Sora left the chamber, the council remained in session for 6 more hours. The discussion was heated and frightened. "Did you see how she reacted to pain?" whispered one representative. "She treated severe tissue damage as a minor inconvenience," said another. "And the things they do for entertainment. 10-kilometer runs, lifting heavy objects, jumping from aircraft. They keep predators as pets. They consume toxins for pleasure. They don't even react normally to injury." Elder Vrex finally called for order. "The humans will be granted full membership," he announced. "They are clearly a peaceful species with much to offer the galaxy." But as the representatives filed out of the chamber, Zathari approached Elder Vrex. "Elder, I have burned beings of 50 different species with hot liquid over the years. All of them screamed. All of them required immediate medical attention. Some went into shock. And the human? She didn't even flinch," Zathari whispered. "The pain that would incapacitate most of us. She treated it as nothing." "What kind of beings are they?" Elder Vrex looked out at the stars through the great windows of the chamber. "I believe," he said quietly, "we are about to find out." Supreme Admiral Kexvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Corvin Glory. Through the massive viewport, he could see 300 warships of the Corvan Republic stretched out in perfect formation. Each ship was a work of art, their silver hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets. He had waited 3 months for this moment. 3 months since the humans had been accepted into the Galactic Council. 3 months of listening to other species whisper about how dangerous humans were supposed to be. 3 months of reading ancient warnings that made no sense. Today he would prove that it was all nonsense. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we have arrived at the first target, the human colony of New Sol." Kexvar smiled. New Sol was a perfect target. The planet had 2 million human colonists, mostly families who had come to farm and build a new life. According to intelligence reports, they had almost no military presence. Just a small defense force led by some former Earth soldier named Colonel Ji-hoon. "How many ships defend the planet?" Kexvar asked. 12, sir. Small patrol vessels. Nothing that could threaten even one of our destroyers." Perfect. The humans would learn that their reputation was built on lies and fear. The Corvan Republic would become famous throughout the galaxy as the species that exposed human weakness. "Begin the attack," Kexvar ordered. The battle was over in less than an hour. The human defense ships fought bravely, but 12 small vessels could not stand against 300 Corvan warships. Colonel Ji-hoon's ships were destroyed or disabled, and Corvan troops landed on New Sol without serious resistance. The second target was Busan Station, a mining colony in the asteroid belt of the same system. Lieutenant Commander Da-Yun led the defense there with only 8 ships. The result was the same: overwhelming Corvan victory. The third target was Jeju 7, an agricultural world where humans grew food for export to other colonies. They had no military ships at all, just civilian transports. The planet surrendered without firing a shot. Within 72 hours, Supreme Admiral Kexvar controlled 3 human worlds and nearly 2 million human prisoners. He activated the galaxy-wide broadcast system, sending his message to every civilized world in known space. "Citizens of the galaxy," he announced proudly, "today the Corvan Republic has accomplished what your leaders told you was impossible. We have conquered the humans." He gestured toward a screen showing Corvan soldiers patrolling human cities. For too long, the galaxy has lived in fear of myths and superstitions. Ancient warnings about a species that had not yet been born. Foolish stories about humans being dangerous. Kexvar laughed. "Look at them now. Their colonies burn. Their people kneel before Corvan might. We have taken 3 of their worlds as easily as a child takes toys from another child." The message continued for 10 minutes, with Kexvar explaining how weak and helpless humans really were. He showed footage of human prisoners being marched into detention camps. He displayed the destroyed human ships. He made it clear that the great human threat was nothing but a galaxy-wide delusion. "Let this demonstrate," he concluded, "that humanity's reputation is nothing but myth and superstition. We have conquered them as easily as we would conquer children. The age of fear is over. The age of Corvan dominance has begun." What Kexvar did not know was that his broadcast was being watched on Nexus Prime by the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called within minutes of his announcement. Representatives who had seemed nervous around Ambassador Sora now looked terrified. "He doesn't understand what he's done," whispered the representative from the Silicon Worlds, Champi. "Human colonies," said another. 2 million prisoners. Elder Vrex sat in his chair, looking older than anyone had ever seen him. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. "Admiral, surely the humans will negotiate," suggested a representative from the Peaceful Meditation Collective. "They are a diplomatic species. They will want to avoid greater bloodshed." "No," Elder Vrex replied. "They will not negotiate. The warnings were very clear about this. Humans do not negotiate when their people are taken as prisoners. Then what will they do?" Elder Vrex was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his communication system and sent a priority message to all Council worlds. "Begin immediate evacuation of all systems within 50 light-years of Corvan space." "This is not a request. This is a survival protocol." Elder Vrex asked the representative from Centauri. "What do you expect to happen?" "I expect," Elder Vrex replied sadly, "that we are about to learn why every ancient civilization left warnings about humans." On the human capital world of Earth, Admiral Heejin received the reports about the Corvan attack while she was having breakfast with her family. Her daughter Minna was telling her about a school project when the emergency communication came through. Admiral Hyejin read the report twice. 3 human colonies attacked, nearly 2 million civilians taken prisoner, dozens of human ships destroyed. She kissed her daughter goodbye and went to her office. 30 minutes later, she issued a statement that was broadcast to every government in the galaxy. The Corvan Republic has 48 hours to release all human prisoners and withdraw from human space. This is not a negotiation. That was the entire message. No threats, no demands for compensation, no diplomatic language. Just a simple statement of fact. Supreme Admiral Kexvar received the message on his flagship and laughed out loud. 48 hours? What will they do? Send a strongly worded letter? His intelligence officers had been monitoring human space. Earth had only 50 warships, and most of them were exploring distant systems. The human colonies had virtually no military forces. There was no possible way humans could mount an effective response. Admiral, his communications officer reported, the humans are broadcasting a response. Let me hear it, Kexvar said, expecting pleas for mercy or offers of surrender. Instead, he heard the voice of Admiral Hyejin, calm and clear. The 48-hour deadline has passed. Colonel Ji-hoon, Lieutenant Commander Daeun, and all human prisoners will be returned safely. The Corvan Republic will withdraw from human space. This will happen. Kexvar was still laughing when the lights went out on his flagship. In the darkness of his command bridge, he heard a voice that should not have been possible. A human voice speaking perfect Corvan coming from somewhere inside his own ship. Supreme Admiral Kexvar, my name is Captain Wu Jin of the Earth Defense Corps. You have 47 hours and 36 minutes to begin releasing human prisoners. I suggest you start with Colonel Ji-hoon. Emergency lighting flickered on, but there was no sign of any human on the bridge. Kexvar's security team searched the entire ship. They found nothing, but every few hours Captain Wu Jin's voice would return, always giving an updated countdown. Always speaking from a different location on the ship. Always impossible to trace or locate. On the second day, Kexvar received reports that other human voices were appearing throughout his fleet. Small groups of humans who should not exist, could not exist, were somehow present on dozens of Corvan ships. By the time he realized that something was terribly wrong, it was far too late. The humans had arrived. Captain Wu Jin materialized inside Supreme Admiral Kexvar's private quarters, like smoke becoming solid. One moment the room was empty. The next moment a human was standing there wearing a dark uniform that seemed to bend light around its edges. Kexvar reached for his sidearm, but his hand froze in mid-motion. He could move, but something in the human's calm expression told him that drawing a weapon would be the last mistake he ever made. Admiral, Wu Jin said politely, we need to talk. How did you get on my ship? Kexvar demanded. My sensors show no human vessels within 1,000 kilometers. Wu Jin smiled, and the expression was somehow more frightening than anger would have been. Your sensors are correct. There are no human vessels nearby. Then how? The same way I've been here for the past 6 days, Wu Jin replied. The same way my team has been preparing for this conversation since before you attacked our colonies. Kexvar felt his blood turn cold. That's impossible. We monitored all human ship movements. No human vessel has entered Corvan space. Admiral, you're thinking about this the wrong way, Wu Jin said, walking over to look out the viewport at the stars. You assume that humans travel the same way you do. You assume we're limited by the same rules that limit you. As he spoke, more humans began to appear in the room. They didn't beam in or teleport. They simply stepped out of shadows that hadn't been deep enough to hide anyone. One moment, Kexvar was alone with Wu Jin. The next moment, 12 humans surrounded him. Each human carried weapons that Kexvar didn't recognize. Each human moved with a fluid grace that suggested they could kill him before he could blink. But more terrifying than their weapons or their movements was their absolute calm. Let me explain what's going to happen, Wu Jin continued. In approximately 6 minutes, every Corvan military installation in this system will be under human control. Your orbital defense platforms, your command stations, your supply depots, all of them. You're insane, Kexvar said. I have 300 ships. You had 300 ships, corrected a female human. She introduced herself as Lieutenant Yunsu. As of 4 minutes ago, you have 300 ships with human crews aboard them. Kexvar activated his communicator. All ships report status. The responses came back immediately. Every single ship reported normal operations. No signs of human presence. No security breaches, you see, Kexvar said. Your bluff has failed. Wu Jin nodded to one of his team members. Jae-sung, would you demonstrate? The human named Jae-sung spoke into his own communicator. Corvin Ship Silver Blade, this is your new engineering officer. Please report to your captain that your main engines are now offline. Kexvar's communicator immediately crackled to life. Admiral, this is Captain Rex 9 of the Silver Blade. Our engines just shut down. We're dead in space. How? Kexvar whispered. We've been aboard your ships for 6 days, Wu Jin explained. Learning your systems. Mapping your networks. Preparing for this moment. Your crews never knew we were there because we didn't want them to know. One by one, reports came in from across the Corvin fleet. Engines failing. Weapon systems offline. Communications disrupted. All happening simultaneously, all clearly coordinated. This is impossible, Kexvar said. Our security systems would have detected you, would they? Asked Lieutenant Yunsu. She gestured toward the wall, and a hidden panel slid open to reveal sophisticated monitoring equipment that definitely wasn't Corvin technology. We've been watching your security systems. We've been watching everything. Wu Jin walked closer to Kexvar. Admiral, I want you to understand something important. This isn't revenge. This isn't anger. This is just efficiency. What do you mean? I mean that humans don't fight wars the way you do. We don't send fleets to destroy fleets. We don't have massive battles with thousands of casualties. We simply solve problems. As if to demonstrate his point, another human appeared in the room. This one was different from the others. Older, with the bearing of someone used to command. She introduced herself as General Minji. Admiral, she said, I've just finished taking control of your homeworld. Kexvar stared at her. What? Corvin Prime is now under human administration. Your planetary government has been dissolved. Your military installations are secured. Your global communications network is under our control. That's impossible, Kexvar shouted. Corvin Prime is the most heavily defended world in the Republic. It has orbital weapons platforms, ground-based defense systems, and entire fleet. General Minji nodded. Yes, it was quite impressive. The orbital platforms are now broadcasting this message. She activated a holo projector that showed the space around Corvin Prime. The massive defense stations that had protected the planet for centuries were still there, but now they displayed human symbols. As Kexvar watched in horror, a calm human voice was broadcasting from his own homeworld. Citizens of the former Corvin Republic, the voice said, this is Commander Dong Hyun of the Earth Defense Corps. Your government has been dissolved for crimes against humanity. You will not be harmed. Your daily lives will continue normally, but you will no longer threaten anyone. How long? Kexvar asked weakly. How long what? General Minji replied. How long did it take you to conquer my entire civilization? We didn't conquer it, Wu Jin corrected. Conquest implies destruction. We simply took control. And to answer your question, it took exactly 72 hours. The same amount of time it took you to occupy our colonies. Kexvar slumped in his chair. What do you want from us? We want Colonel Ji-hoon back, Wu Jin said simply. We want Lieutenant Commander Da-un back. We want all 2 million human prisoners returned safely. And we want to make sure this never happens again. And then you'll be free to rebuild your civilization, General Minji said. Under human supervision, of course. We'll help you create a government that doesn't make the mistake of attacking peaceful neighbors. Kexvar looked around the room at the humans surrounding him. What are you people? We're exactly what we appear to be, Wu Jin replied. We're humans. We're peaceful. We prefer diplomacy to violence. We'd rather build things than destroy them. But we're very good at solving problems, Lieutenant Yunsu added. And when someone takes our people prisoner, that becomes a problem that needs to be solved. The warnings, Kexvar whispered. The ancient warnings about your species. Yes, Wu Jin nodded. Those warnings exist for a good reason. What reason? Wu Jin walked back to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Because humans are the kind of species that survives. No matter what happens to us, no matter how impossible the odds, we find a way. And sometimes that way involves making sure that certain mistakes are never repeated. 3 hours later, every human prisoner was released. Colonel Ji-hoon and Lieutenant Commander Da-un were returned to their people unharmed. The human colonies were restored to their original condition, as if the invasion had never happened. But the Corvan Republic was gone forever. In its place was a new government, guided by human advisors dedicated to peaceful cooperation with their neighbors. And throughout the galaxy, the message was clear. The oldest law was still in effect. Never provoke humans, because now everyone knew what happened when someone broke that law. Colonel Ji-hoon opened his eyes slowly. He was lying on a medical bed, and the ceiling above him was definitely not Corvan. The metal was the wrong color. The lights were too warm, and he could hear voices speaking in Korean somewhere nearby. "Colonel?" A familiar voice made him turn his head. Captain Sung-ho was sitting in a chair beside the bed, looking tired but relieved. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been in a Corvan prison for 3 days," Ji-hoon replied, trying to sit up. "Where are we?" "You're on the medical ship Healing Dawn, sir. We're in orbit around New Seoul." Ji-hoon looked confused. New Seoul was occupied. The Corvans had 300 ships. They did, Sung-ho agreed. Now they have 300 ships with human crews aboard them. Before Ji-hoon could ask what that meant, the medical bay door opened and Admiral Hee-jin walked in. She looked exactly like she always did, calm, professional, and slightly amused by the universe. "Colonel," she said, "welcome back." "Admiral, how is this possible?" "The last thing I remember, I was being transferred to a prison ship. My defense fleet was destroyed. The colony was captured. Your defense fleet fought bravely," Admiral Hee-jin replied. "But you were outnumbered 50-1. No one expected you to win that fight." "Then how?" Admiral Hee-jin sat down in another chair. "Colonel, what do you know about human space warfare doctrine?" "I know we prefer to avoid fights when possible. I know we try to end conflicts quickly and with minimal casualties." "That's correct. But there's something else you should know." She activated a holoprojector that showed the battle around New Seoul. "We don't fight fair." The projection showed the Corvan attack from a different perspective, while the official battle was happening in space. With 12 human ships fighting 300 Corvan vessels, something else was occurring. Tiny objects too small for Corvan sensors to detect were moving through space toward the enemy fleet. They looked like debris or cosmic dust, but they moved with purpose. "Infiltration pods," Admiral Hee-jin explained. "Each one carries a 4-person team. We launched 3,000 of them from hidden positions throughout the system." 3,000? Ji-hoon stared at the projection. "That's 12,000 people. Where did they come from?" "They were already here," Captain Sung-ho said. "They've been here for months preparing for exactly this scenario." The projection continued, showing the pods reaching the Corvan ships. But instead of exploding or attacking, they simply disappeared. One moment they were visible on the sensors, the next moment they were gone. "Phasing technology," Admiral Hee-jin said simply. "They passed through the hulls of the enemy ships without leaving any trace." "That's impossible," Ji-hoon protested. "Matter can't just pass through matter. Human matter can," Admiral Hee-jin replied. "When we want it to." The next part of the projection showed what happened inside the Corvan ships. Humans appeared in corridors, on bridges, and engineering sections. But they weren't fighting. They weren't even visible most of the time. They were simply there. For 72 hours, Captain Sung-ho explained, our teams lived alongside Corvan crews without being detected. They learned the ship's systems, mapped the networks, identified key personnel. They became invisible parts of the enemy fleet. And when the deadline passed, Admiral Hee-jin said, they stopped being invisible. The projection showed the moment when everything changed. Simultaneously, across 300 ships, humans stepped out of shadows and announced their presence. Corvan crews found themselves face to face with beings they had never seen coming. But what amazed Ji-hoon was that there was no violence. The Corvans were subdued but not harmed. They were restrained but gently. Their weapons were taken, but they were treated with respect. "We don't kill unless we have to," Admiral Hee-jin explained. "The Corvan crews are being held in comfortable detention. They'll be released once their government signs a peace treaty." "What about the colonies?" "My people?" "New Seoul is completely restored," Captain Sung-ho reported. "The Corvan occupation forces are gone. The colonists who were taken prisoner have been returned. The infrastructure that was damaged has been repaired." "How is that possible?" "I saw Corvan troops in the streets." "Buildings were destroyed." Admiral Hee-jin smiled. "Colonel, you're still thinking like warfare is destructive. Human warfare is reconstructive." She showed him another projection, this one of New Seoul itself. Teams of humans were working throughout the city, but they weren't soldiers. They were engineers, builders, medical personnel. While our military teams were taking control of the Corvin fleet, she explained, our reconstruction teams were repairing everything the Corvins had damaged. We brought materials, equipment, even prefabricated buildings. By the time the prisoners were released, their homes were better than they had been before the attack. That must have cost enormous resources, Ji-hoon observed. Less than you might think, Admiral Hyojin replied. We've been preparing for this possibility since humans first entered galactic space. We knew that eventually someone would test us. You knew? Colonel, we read the same ancient warnings everyone else did. We knew that every civilization that had ever fought humans was destroyed. We also knew that someday someone would decide those warnings were superstition. Captain Sung-ho activated another display. What really amazes me is how precise everything was. The Corvin fleet was neutralized in exactly 72 hours, the same amount of time they held our colonies. That wasn't a coincidence, Admiral Hyojin said. We wanted to send a very specific message. You can hurt us, but we will respond proportionally. You held our people for 72 hours, so we held your civilization for 72 hours. What happens now? Now the Corvin Republic becomes something new. We're helping them establish a government that won't make the same mistakes. Their military will be restructured for defense only. They'll become productive members of the galactic community. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment, processing everything he had heard. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. Are we really as dangerous as the ancient warnings suggest? Admiral Hyojin looked out the medical bay viewport at New Seoul, where human and former Corvin workers were building something together. Colonel, what do you think is more dangerous? A species that destroys its enemies or a species that converts its enemies into friends? I don't understand. The Corvin Republic attacked us with hatred. Their people were taught that humans were weak and deserving of conquest. In 72 hours, we didn't just defeat them militarily. We changed their entire civilization. Their children will grow up in a society that values cooperation over conquest. Ji-hoon paused. That's terrifying in a completely different way. Yes, Admiral Hyojin agreed. It is, because it means that human victory is absolute. We don't just win wars. We eliminate the possibility of future wars. Captain Sung-ho pulled up one final projection. It showed the galaxy as it was now, with trade routes and communication networks connecting thousands of worlds. Every species that has ever fought humans has ended up becoming humanity's ally, he said, not because we conquered them, but because we showed them a better way to exist. And if someone refuses? No one has ever refused, Admiral Hyojin replied, because by the time we're finished with them, they genuinely want to be better than they were. Ji-hoon lay back on his medical bed and stared at the ceiling. The ancient warnings were right, weren't they? We really are deceptively dangerous. Yes, Colonel, but not in the way most people think. We're dangerous because we're contagious. Contagious? Human values are contagious. Human determination is contagious. Human refusal to accept defeat is contagious. Once you spend time with humans, once you see how we approach problems, it changes you permanently. Admiral Hyojin stood up to leave. Get some rest, Colonel. Tomorrow you'll be back on New Seoul, helping to train former Corvin soldiers in peacekeeping techniques. They want to learn from us? They insist on it, she replied with a smile. Apparently they're quite impressed with how we handled their invasion.